In a courtroom packed with reporters and royalty, Elton John stepped forward, clutching a folder marked Operation Cassandra. His voice trembled, but his words pierced history. "I now know who pulled the strings that night in Paris." Gasps echoed. Behind him, unseen footage of Diana's final moments played. Elton revealed secret letters, diary entries, and palace whispers Diana had shared. A web of manipulation, fear, and betrayal. For decades, the crash was labeled a tragedy. But now, with Elton naming those he believes let it happen, a haunting truth emerges. Diana didn't just die, she was silenced. Cold open, the big reveal. A packed courtroom sits under a heavy silence. Every seat is filled. Not one person shifts or coughs. Not a soul breathes too loud. All eyes lock on the center aisle, on the man who is about to say something that could alter royal history forever. Sir Elton John walks steadily toward the stand, his face more grave than glamorous. He's not the music icon here today. He's a witness, a keeper of secrets, a man with a promise to keep. In his hands, he clutches a thick red folder. Bold block letters read, Operation Cassandra. The label itself whispers danger, mystery, and power. It isn't just documentation, it's a loaded weapon, a Pandora's box about to be opened. He places the folder down and raises his eyes to the judge. The courtroom camera clicks softly, but his voice silences them all. "I now know who pulled the strings on that night in Paris." The impact is instant. Murmurs. One reporter drops a pen. Another crosses herself instinctively. Elton stands still, the weight of decades pressing on his chest. A nearby artist sketches him under the stained glass emblem of justice. The contrast of elegance and sorrow impossible to miss. Suddenly, the courtroom screen comes to life. Raw footage, grainy, haunting. Diana climbing into the black Mercedes. Paparazzi flashing. The blur of headlights. The concrete tunnel swallowing everything. The twisted wreckage. The aftermath. People who thought they knew this story are now seeing it through Elton's lens, one of betrayal, manipulation, and long-buried horror. This moment is no longer about tabloids or conspiracy. It's about something deeper, a buried truth surfacing after years of silence, a truth someone desperately wanted to keep hidden. Why Elton, the emotional anchor? Not all witnesses hold weight, but this one does. Sir Elton John isn't just here to testify. He's here to fulfill a sacred obligation to Diana, to her memory, to the silence she was forced to live under, and the truth she died with. He starts gently, voice almost cracked by emotion. "We talked often, sometimes daily. She told me things she didn't tell anyone else, not because I was famous, but because I listened." His hands tremble slightly as he lifts a sealed envelope. The handwriting across the flap is instantly recognizable. It's Diana's, slanted, rushed, intimate. Inside is a letter, one he's never shared before. He reads, voice faltering only slightly, "If anything ever happens to me, don't believe it was an accident." The courtroom tightens. Even seasoned attorneys stare forward, unmoving. Elton pauses and places a hand to his heart. "She feared she'd be erased, silenced. She told me they were watching her movements, controlling her narrative. She was terrified." He draws a deep breath and delivers the line that pins every soul to their seat. "I wasn't just a friend. I was a guardian of her truth. And today, I'm doing what she asked me to do." There's a hush, a reverence. This isn't spectacle. It's confession. It's heartbreak forged into testimony. And it carries more emotional weight than any tabloid ever could. Revisiting the Paris crash. Elton's voice steadies as he turns to the moment that changed everything. August 31st, 1997. The day the world stopped. The day Diana died. He walks the court through the timeline, not with drama, but with haunting clarity. The Ritz Hotel, the decoy plan, the narrow tunnel, the waiting paparazzi, the screams, the silence that followed. But then he pivots into the inconsistencies, to him, have never fully connected. The driver's blood alcohol report, it made no sense to those who knew him. He didn't drink that night. His own family said it was planted. He talks about the last-minute switch in security detail, the mysterious white Fiat that clipped the car and vanished. How does that vehicle disappear in a city surrounded by cameras? And then the bombshell. The tunnel, one of the most surveilled routes in Paris. But the CCTV tapes were missing, deleted, malfunctioned. All of them. That's not coincidence. That's coordination. He then pulls out Diana's personal diary. For the first time, he reads a line to the public. "They're closing in. I can feel it. I didn't know who to trust." These weren't imagined fears. These were carefully logged, dated, cross-referenced with events. Diana wasn't spiraling. She was alert. She was warning someone. Now, through Elton, she's warning the world. He places one final folder on the stand. Inside, travel logs, medical alerts, repeated written requests for enhanced security. All denied. Elton looks across the courtroom. This wasn't just misfortune. This wasn't fate. This was orchestrated silence. The silence that follows is louder than any scream. Allegations surface. Elton's hands tremble slightly as he lifts another envelope. This one thinner than the rest, yet somehow heavier in meaning. The courtroom leans in once again. The label reads simply, June 97, confidential. Inside, he finds a handwritten note. Short, fragmented, yet unmistakably Diana's. Her cursive script, always neat, is uneven here, as if written under stress. Elton reads aloud. Secret meetings. Inside the palace. Whispers about the crown's image. I'm being watched more than ever. I don't feel safe. The note is redacted. Names blacked out. But the initials remain. RH. Letters that mean nothing to the public, but everything to those inside the palace. Elton stops. He looks up. His lips quiver just slightly. A former royal bodyguard told me directly there were instructions to dim her spotlight. The room freezes. You could hear a pin drop. No coughs, no shifting, no scribbles. Just the crackling sound of emotional lightning striking the heart of the monarchy. He confesses that he's held on to this for decades. Fear, retaliation, threats, both direct and veiled. He speaks now not as a celebrity, but as a man burdened by the weight of truth. I can't live with the silence, not anymore. He reveals 3 anonymous sources. One of them, a former MI6 liaison. Another, a high-ranking palace staffer. The third, a former communications handler turned whistleblower. Together, they confirm Diana's phones were tapped, her routes tracked, her movements questioned in every corridor of power. There was internal pressure, Elton says slowly, to rein her in. And with that, the courtroom shudders under the weight of an invisible truth finally spoken aloud. Examining key figures. As the courtroom processes the bombshells, attention now turns to the shadowy figures behind the curtain. Elton lifts his head and begins listing roles, not names. Palace insiders, he says. People who orchestrated tabloid smokescreens, who quietly rerouted royal press events to overshadow Diana's charity appearances. Figures who didn't need to be famous, just strategic. Then he pivots to the French side. He references ignored diplomatic calls on the night of Diana's death, messages sent from London to Paris requesting assistance, all of which were reportedly logged but never answered. And then the line that drops like a hammer. The Mercedes wasn't just being chased, it was being herded. The audience collectively leans in. That word, herded, implies not just pursuit, but orchestration, calculation. Elton then references inter-embassy communications, flagged by time, but marked as routine. But they weren't. The calls happened during the same hour the crash occurred. The timing is chilling. He stops short of naming royals, but his message is unmistakable. Powerful people with motive, resources, and reach did nothing to stop what they could have, and may have even helped it happen. This wasn't a tragic accident anymore. This was an arrangement. Supporting documents. As the room sits in stunned silence, Elton takes one final breath and opens his briefcase for what may be the most damning material of all. He pulls out a cassette player, clicks the button, and Diana's voice crackles into the courtroom. It's late night, weary, but unmistakably her, recorded in her Kensington Palace apartment. They're watching. They want control. If I disappear, tell my boys I tried. A collective inhale. Even the court stenographer looks up from her keys. Next comes a French police report, long forgotten in the archives. It details brake inconsistencies found in the Mercedes, but filed under minor mechanical concern. Elton's lawyers argue it was intentionally downgraded to protect diplomatic relations. No follow-up ever took place. Then, from a sealed envelope, Elton produces a yellowed letter, dated May 1997. Diana wrote directly to a senior royal aide, requesting additional security for her planned trip to France. The request was explicit, timely, and deeply serious. The response? Not required at this time. No explanation, just a decision that would echo through eternity. Elton doesn't speak as the papers are passed down the bench. He doesn't need to. Every face that reads them is etched with disbelief, unease, and something close to guilt. Because this wasn't negligence. This was a denial of protection. And when Diana lost that protection, she lost everything. Elton closes the folder, his voice soft. The system didn't fail her by accident. It was built to fail her. The final paper hits the desk with a soft thud, but the sound is deafening, and the world will never unhear it. Emotional appeal. There comes a moment in every courtroom, not marked by law but by something deeper, when the air changes. It's no longer about arguments or evidence. It's about truth meeting grief. Elton steps back from the stand. He no longer holds files or letters. Just memory, just heartache. His fingers press into the edge of the podium, knuckles pale. His voice quivers for the first time all day. She was scared, not of being alone, but of being erased. The words don't land like accusations. They land like confessions. He reaches into his coat and unfolds one final letter, creased from time, stained faintly with age. Diana's handwriting is rushed, the lines slanted, the ink smudged. He reads it aloud, and the courtroom holds its breath. If something happens to me, remember, it wasn't my choice to die. The sentence hangs in the air like a specter, not theory, not fiction. Her voice, through him, has returned to the room. Behind Elton, two photographs appear on the court's display. The first, Diana walking barefoot on a beach with William and Harry, young, smiling, free. The second, Elton and Diana arm in arm at a gala, laughing, glittering, alive. The juxtaposition is devastating. Tears begin to streak down Elton's cheeks. He lowers his head for a moment. Then, softly, I should have done more. I'm sorry I couldn't protect her. He raises his eyes, not to the judge, not to the press, but directly into the live courtroom camera, now broadcasting across the globe. William, Harry, I tried to keep her truth safe for you. There is no bitterness in his tone, no retribution, just sorrow. He's not accusing. He's grieving. And the power of that grief is so raw, so unfiltered, that even the courtroom's media crew instinctively lower their cameras, sensing this isn't news. It's sacred. Even the loudest critics can't deny it now. Elton isn't just telling a story. He's carrying the last words of a woman who feared she'd be forgotten. And in this moment, she is anything but forgotten. Courtroom tension peaks. If emotion was the spark, what follows is the explosion. The judge, pale and visibly shaken, reaches for her gavel. Her voice is barely steady as she calls for a recess. 10 minutes, she says, but it sounds more like a plea than a command. Elton's legal team instantly surrounds him. No panic, just rapid whispers and eyes darting across the gallery. They know what's coming. Outside the courtroom, chaos brews. Within minutes, phones buzz across every legal and media desk in the city. Palace lawyers have mobilized, one insider tweets. Another post leaks that emergency meetings have been called in Whitehall. The Royal Communications Office has gone into blackout. No statements, no briefings. Speculation swells like a storm tide. Where is Charles? Where is Camilla? The answer comes not from a statement, but from a whisper that cuts through the press line like a knife. They left. No glance back. No comment. Just vanished. Reporters scramble. Cameras shift toward the court steps. And outside, it's no longer just fans or bystanders. It's citizens, supporters, protesters, candle holders, sign carriers. The steps of the court begin to glow with flickering light, the weight of public emotion manifesting into something physical, something unignorable. One banner stretches across the gate. She asked for help. We ignored her. Never again. Even seasoned journalists describe the mood as monarchical shock therapy, a reawakening of a trauma long buried, now erupting in a wave of demand, not for punishment, but for truth, because the courtroom is no longer a chamber of law. It's become a crucible of reckoning. This isn't about evidence anymore. It's about what the world does with what it now knows. And there's no going back. Expert insight. As the emotional current still simmers through the courtroom, the narrative shifts once again, this time into dissection. Facts, context, and consequences are now the focus. And for that, the world turns to the experts. The cameras pivot to a small panel seated to the left of the judge's bench. 4 figures in dark suits, brought in not to tell the story, but to validate it. First, a forensic analyst stands. His voice is calm, his posture rigid with conviction. He moves toward the exhibit screen and begins mapping out what should have happened that night in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel versus what did. He speaks of speed discrepancies. The official report claimed over 120 km/h. But new forensics from tire marks and collision angles suggest the car was moving slower. He points to the alleged brake failure, calling it mechanically illogical without tampering. And then the sentence that changes everything. It doesn't add up unless something or someone was manipulated. The audience is silent again, but this silence feels different. He isn't offering speculation. He's offering structure to suspicion. Then steps forward a psychological profiler, an expert who's spent years studying high-profile trauma and behavioral patterns. She plays an excerpt from Diana's private audio recordings. They want me out of the way. I know it. I feel it. She pauses. She isn't calling it paranoia. This is what we refer to as pattern-based perception. It stems from repeated betrayals, real surveillance, actual manipulation. Diana wasn't irrational. She was surrounded by controlled chaos. The words cut deeply. This wasn't the portrait of a princess losing grip. This was a woman seeing things no one wanted to believe. Then the legal dimension takes center stage. A constitutional scholar lays out the implications with a clarity that leaves the court breathless. He says that if even a third of Elton's submitted documents and testimonies withstand legal scrutiny, the UK may be obligated to reopen the case, not as rumor, not as drama, but as a formal investigation into the royal system's role in her death. And finally, the royal lens arrives. A seasoned historian, an expert in monarchy, succession, and image, steps forward with words that chill the spine. What Elton's done today isn't just historical. It's foundational. The monarchy cannot come back from this unchanged. That sentence settles over the courtroom like fog. This wasn't just the testimony of a grieving friend. This was the ignition point of a royal reckoning. The timeline has split. There is life before this testimony, and now, life after it. And in that rift, one thing becomes terrifyingly clear. The truth is no longer hidden behind palace walls. It's standing in a courtroom, and it's not leaving quietly. Reactions from the royal family. As the court adjourns for the day, silence drapes over the palace corridors, but leaks begin almost instantly. Buckingham insiders say Charles is deeply wounded, not just by the content, but by the sheer public exposure of it all. Privately, he's said to have shaken his head and muttered, "He never should have gone there." But someone else has, and he's not angry. Sources confirm that Prince William, in a quiet, unseen move, sent a private message to Elton. It was short, discreet, but heartfelt. "Thank you for protecting her memory." Meanwhile, Harry, currently overseas, releases a statement that echoes louder than expected. "The truth deserves light, and our mother deserves peace." The family is now fractured, not by politics, not by duty, but by truth. Some cling to silence, others reach for answers. And as Camilla reportedly refuses comment, retreating from view, the fractures only deepen. This is no longer a family in mourning. It's a family in war with its own past. Global media explosion. As the court's doors close for the day, the world outside is already ablaze. Headlines erupt within minutes. Elton unmasks the crash. Diana's death orchestrated. Palace in panic. Global newsrooms work overtime. Anchors scrambling to decode every line Elton delivered. Special broadcasts interrupt regular programming. In France, reporters demand that archived evidence be reopened. In the UK, the public takes to the streets. An online petition, simply titled #Reopen Diana Crashwam, surges past 1 million signatures in hours. Social platforms turn chaotic. Threads dissect Diana's diary entries, freeze-frame the court footage, and debate every syllable Elton uttered. TikTokers reenact the courtroom moment. YouTube explodes with instant documentaries and reaction videos. But beneath the buzz lies something deeper. Grief, reborn. Vigils begin. Candles flicker outside Kensington Palace again, just like they did all those years ago. People who were children when Diana died now stand in silence, hand in hand with their own children. Her memory is no longer passive, it is defiant. Talk shows line up royal experts, security consultants, psychologists, every angle analyzed. Podcasts drop emergency episodes titled "The Truth About That Night." while Reddit floods with theories and timelines. Everyone is watching. Everyone is asking. If she feared this would happen and told someone, why was nothing done? In one powerful image, a protester stands outside the High Court holding a single sign. They knew. She warned us. We ignored her. The public mood shifts from curiosity to righteous demand. What began as a testimony from a grieving friend is now a firestorm, and the monarchy stands at the center, no longer insulated by gold or lineage, but exposed by a single truth it never imagined would surface. Legal and legacy fall out. The world is reeling, but behind closed doors, the real work begins. In Westminster, ministers convene in hushed emergency meetings. A growing number of MPs call for a full public inquest. A Lord Justice, retired but still revered, agrees to review the materials Elton presented in court. It is a legal tremor that threatens to become a constitutional quake. Over in France, officials announce a review of police records and vehicle forensics. The language is restrained, but the implication clear. There may have been oversights, or worse, suppression. Inside Buckingham Palace, tension is at a boiling point. Staffers are said to be clearing internal servers, sorting through decades of communications, prepping for potential subpoenas. Longtime aides whisper that a Diana clause was always unofficially present, a code of silence not to disturb her memory. That code, it seems, has been shattered. Public institutions begin to squirm. MI6 refuses comment. Former palace press secretaries say they won't dignify conspiracy, but even their language rings hollow now. And as Parliament's scrutiny deepens, so does the public's appetite for answers. What were once considered accidents now read like omissions. What once passed as grief now feels eerily like guilt. Meanwhile, Diana's name trends daily, not for tragedy, but for truth. This isn't just a royal reckoning. It's a legacy rewritten in real time. The crown now faces a dilemma far bigger than image. It must now answer whether integrity ever mattered more than loyalty. Cliffhanger. Will the truth come out? The final gavel falls for the day, but this story is far from over. Outside the court, Elton emerges slowly, flanked by his legal team. He clutches something closely. Diana's diary, worn and real. He doesn't speak to reporters. He doesn't need to. His silence now echoes louder than any royal proclamation. Camera flashes erupt like lightning storms. Yet all he does is nod once, solemnly, and step into his car. The final image lingers. Elton John, the global icon, leaving court with the voice of a princess in his hands. Voiceover begins, low and deliberate. Someone knew. Diana feared. Elton spoke. Will justice follow? Then a rapid-fire montage. William seated at a desk, reading silently. Harry meeting lawyers in California. Camilla alone at a window. Charles in a darkened room, unreadable. And the Queen's portrait still hanging. Framed in a storm the institution can no longer ignore. A final tease rolls across the screen. Next episode, William and Harry unite. The public inquiry begins. Palace Council readies its defense. The audience is left breathless, not just wondering if justice will come, but what the price of that justice might be. Because this isn't just about one woman anymore, it's about the wound she left behind, and whether truth will finally be allowed to heal it. Fade to black. As Elton leaves court, clutching Diana's words close, the world is left reeling. Was it truly an accident or a royal cover-up? With secrets now exposed and more likely to surface, the people demand answers. Justice delayed may no longer be justice denied. The truth has finally found its voice.